Hi, Trinity. It's great to see you on here. I hope you're doing really well and having a great week. We're going to start by doing a review of figurative language today to get us all set and ready for our poetry unit. And so we're just going to kind of go over two things today. We're going to go over what a poem is and then what figurative language is. I know you guys did an awesome job on your figurative language unit and you even wrote your own figurative language books. So hopefully this is a nice, easy review for you. We're going to start by tackling that question of what a poem is. So a poem is a verbal composition designed to convey experiences, ideas, or emotions in a vivid and imaginative way, characterized by the use of language, chosen for its sounds and suggestive power, and by the use of literary techniques such as meter, metaphor, and rhyme. And that is from dictionary.com. So poetry has a lot of structure to it, and we're going to kind of go over those structural details. But another aspect of poetry is that it can be very free. Even with something being very free, it's still going to follow a structure such as like parallelism and making sure that you're kind of not necessarily rhyming, but you're using the same formula as you go so that you can really, your reader can read it in the tone and at the pace that you really meant it to be read. One important thing to remember is that poetry does not have to rhyme. Absolutely not. A lot of people feel like poetry needs to rhyme, but some of the most beautiful poems out there are not rhyming. They do follow rhythm and pattern though. One thing that could be kind of considered poetry is hymns. And hymns do a lot of times rhyme, and they follow musically, they follow a formula and a pattern. So hymns are actually really good music to learn music to and learn rhyme and rhythm and things like that because it follows such a followable structure that, an easy to follow structure. So anyhow, we're going to be writing our own poems. Some key elements of poetry is using creativity, being imaginative, and expressing your ideas. And that's one of the reasons why we're actually doing this right now. First of all, it is National Poetry Month, but also right now while we're learning from home, it's really, really important that you continue to express your ideas. And in class, you're able to express your ideas constantly and get feedback constantly from me. So the reason we're doing podcasts and poems is to give yourself a voice that can be heard outside of the classroom. So hopefully this is a positive activity for you. So let's get to what makes a good poem. Good poetry is going to use figurative language. And so we're going to do that quick review of what figurative language is, starting with similes. So similes are going to be a comparison between two unlike things. And you guys know this, but it's going to use like or as. So as I'm reading, it's easy to identify similes because I'm going to see that like or as. And our example here is the baseball player sprinted to first base like a rocket. And this is where we talk about comparing two unlike things. A person and a rocket are two completely different things. But what we're trying to convey here is that the baseball player was really fast. And so instead of being kind of like not interesting and a little bit boring by saying the baseball player sprinted really fast, you use a simile to make your writing a little bit more interesting. All right, so we're going to move on to some simile examples. Here we go. Friends are like chocolate cake. Obviously, friends are not chocolate cake. Friends are like chocolate cake. You can never have too many. Chocolate cake is like heaven, always amazing you with each taste or feeling. Chocolate cake is like life with so many different pieces. Chocolate cake is like happiness. You can never get enough of it. Unknown author. So this is a student's writing talking about chocolate cake and friends as well. And you can see like all the way down that poem. You can see like, and like in green. And so you can, of course, also use similes with as, but that was that one example. So now we're going to move on to metaphors. And metaphors also compare two unlike things, just like similes do. The difference is that they don't use the phrase like or as. So an example would be the baseball player was a rocket sprinting to first base. Now, we absolutely know when we read this, the baseball player is not actually a rocket, but it isn't using like or as here. So the metaphors are going to talk about things that aren't actually real and shouldn't be taken literally, just like figurative language does. All right, now we are going to move into some examples. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And that's by Emily Dickinson, awesome poet. This obviously is comparing hope to a bird. And so hope and a bird are two unlike things. They're not equal. But she's describing what hope feels like and how it acts. And she thinks hope kind of acts like a bird. All right, let's move on. Next, we're going to move into alliteration. When we did this in class, alliteration seemed to be one of the easiest ones for you, where you could kind of see that sound pattern, but it's going to be repetition of the first consonant sounds in neighboring words. Now, when we did this initially, we made up our own stores where I could do like Lexi's Lollipop Shop or something like that. Lexi's Lollipop is going to use that same L sound at the beginning. I mean, you guys came up with your own store and business names with that using your names. We're going to do a couple more examples. The drooling, daring dog stole food from the table, and you see the duh sounds right there. That's alliteration. Again, alliteration is just there to kind of keep things interesting. A lot of wordplay can happen with alliteration, which, people really enjoy. It doesn't have to be consecutive, meaning it doesn't have to be right next to each other, but it generally is. So generally, when you see alliteration, it's going to be word after word after word with the same sound. Tongue twisters, pardon me, which I can't even say. Tongue twisters are another good example of alliteration. Let's move on. And by the way, I should mention, as we're going through this, you can totally be filling out your note sheet that is due to me at the end of this week, and you can be writing some of these examples down. Of course, I would like your own examples, but if you want to write your examples as you go, that's totally fine with me. Okay, so here's an example of alliteration in poetry. And remember, it repeats consonant sounds, and it's the beginning consonant sound. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies. And all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. So in this example, you can see alliteration that's a little bit hidden. You probably wouldn't notice it if I wasn't telling you to kind of look for alliteration in the paragraph. What I wanted you to notice is the cloudless climes. That actually, the beginning consonant sound is a blend of CL. So the only way this one will work is if you have two CL words in it, because it's a blend, just like BL would be, CL would be. That's a blend. All right, let's move on to onomatopoeia. This one also, I feel like you guys got right away. It's like those Batman words. Onomatopoeia is going to be spelled out sounds like bam or bang or I'm trying to think of others, pow, things like that. So again, the example shows crack, boom, pop, drop would be one of those things, drip. Or pardon me, I should correct myself. Drip, drop would be one. So they're going to sound like what they mean. And we have a YouTube video here. I'm going to play it really quickly so you can hear it.
Scream, holler and yell, buzz a buzzer, clang a bell. Sneeze, hiccup, whistle, shout, laugh until your lungs wear out. Toot a whistle, kick a can, bang a spoon against a pan. Sing, yodel, bellow, hum. Blow a horn, beat a drum. Rattle a window, slam a door, scrape a rake across the floor. Use a drill, drive a nail, turn the hose in the garbage pail. Shout, yahoo, hurrah, hooray! Turn up the music all the way. Try and bounce your bowling ball, ride a skateboard up the wall, chomp your food with a snack and a slurp, chew, chomp, hiccup, burp. One day a year, do all of these. The rest of the days, be quiet, please.
Okay, so that's just one quick example. I'm going to pull our PowerPoint back up and we're going to move on. So the very last one that we're going to be talking about today is personification and hyperbole. Personification is going to give human qualities to objects, ideas, or animals. So it's going to give human qualities to like a pencil or to the grass. A common thing is to personify nature and to talk about like the wind blowing in a certain way that would be kind of giving human qualities to it. So here's the example. The trees roared during the storm. Again, there you go. That is an example in nature. All right, let's read this William Blake poem, and you can take a look for the personification within that. Ah, William, we're weary of weather, said the sunflowers, shining with dew. Our traveling habits have tired us. Can you give us a room with a view? They arranged themselves at the window and counted the steps of the sun, and they both took root in the carpet where the topaz tortoises run. So all of this is about sunflowers performing human actions. So sunflowers won't arrange themselves, right? They're talking about being tired. So that example could be highlighted in green as well. They counted the steps of the sun and they took root in the carpet. None of these things can actually happen. A sunflower can't do these things, but they're giving them personal qualities. And the last part that we're going to talk about is hyperbole. This is extreme exaggeration for emphasis. So for example, right now you could probably say, I have 1,000,000 assignments, because I know this is really overwhelming, but you probably really don't have 1,000,000 assignments. I have eaten 1,000,000 pieces of candy on Halloween. We're going to watch one more video that gives you some examples of hyperbole in poetry.
Greasy napkins, cookie crumbs, globs of gooey bubble gum, cellophane from green bologna, rubbery. Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout would not take the garbage out. A poem by Shel Silverstein. Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout would not take the garbage out. She'd scour the pots and scrape the pans, candy the yams and spice the hams. And though her daddy would scream and shout, she simply would not take the garbage out. And so it piled up to the ceiling, coffee grounds, potato peelings, brown bananas, rotten peas, chunks of sour cottage cheese. It filled the can, it covered the floor, it cracked the window and blocked the door, with bacon rinds and chicken bones, drippy ends of ice cream cones, prune pits, peach pits, orange peel, gloppy glumps of cold oatmeal, pizza crusts and withered greens, soggy beans and tangerines, crusts of black-burned buttered toast, gristly bits of beefy roast. The garbage rolled on down the hall, it raised the roof, it broke the wall. Greasy napkins, cookie crumbs, globs of gooey bubble gum, cellophane from green bologna, rubbery blubbery macaroni, peanut butter caked and dried, curdled milk and crusts of pie, moldy melons, dried up mustard, eggshells mixed with lemon custard, cold French fried and rancid meat, yellow lumps of cream of wheat. At last the garbage reached so high that it finally touched the sky, and all the neighbors moved away, and none of her friends would come to play. And finally Sarah Cynthia Stout said, "Okay, I'll take the garbage out." But then, of course, it was too late. The garbage reached across the state, from New York to the Golden Gate, and there, in the garbage she did hate, poor Sarah met an awful fate that I cannot now relate, because the hour is much too late. But children, remember Sarah Stout, and always take the garbage out.
Okay, so that's just an example of a Shel Silverstein poem that's pretty famous, that really exaggerates what's actually happening. I would hope her house is not that filled with garbage, and it couldn't possibly, of course, go across the state. So this was a quick review to kind of go through those qualities again. I hope you were able to fill in your note sheet as we went to put down the definitions of what these elements are, and then to give us some good examples that you could think of. I'm excited to see your examples. There's no other work that we're going to do in poetry this week. We just wanted to kind of get primed for what it's going to look like next week. And obviously, figurative language makes writing really, really interesting instead of just always being very, very literal. And so I hope we can really work to get these elements included in our writing. Have a great rest of the week. I hope all is well. Bye.